crochet this bauble Christmas ornament with me. Hi there, I'm Cilla from Cilla Crochets, and I'm here to cheer you on throughout your crochet journey, no matter what stage you're at. In this video, I'm going to show you how to crochet this Christmas bauble ornament. This is the 7th video tutorial in the 12 Days of Christmas Crochet-Along series. Now, before we get started in crochet, make sure you check that description below. There are links to the written free pattern, but there are also timestamps so you can click on the different parts of this video that you need when you need them. Let's dive in and let me show you the materials you'll need to make your bauble Christmas decoration. To make this bauble Christmas tree decoration, you'll need some DK yarn. In the original pattern, I used 3 colors you'll see here. So I've got the blue, the white, and this gold. The blue and the white were Rico Rickarumi DK, and then the outside gold was Rico Rickarumi Lame. For today's pattern, I'm just going to be using some of the scrap yarn I've got in pink and this grey silver colour. That yarn is Signet DK. It is acrylic yarn. I'm not a huge fan of acrylic yarn normally, but this is a great opportunity to use up some scrap yarn, so I'm going to do that as well. And as a little bonus, I am going to use some of the Rico Rickarumi Lame in silver to do this little detailing embroidery on the front of the bauble. You'll also need a crochet hook. I'm using a 2.5mm Clover and More crochet hook. If you're in the US, you can use a size C or a 2.75mm crochet hook. That would be absolutely fine as well. The only thing I'll say is I recommend using a smaller crochet hook than what your yarn label recommends, and that is just to avoid any gaps appearing in your stitches so stuffing can't escape. Speaking of stuffing, you will need some stuffing as well. That is if you are making the 3D shape like I am. You can of course opt to just make this as a flat decoration, a 2D decoration, in which case you won't need the stuffing. For me today, I am making the entire 3D decoration, so stuffing is required. You'll also need a tapestry needle for sewing, scissors, and a stitch marker to keep track of your stitches. Lastly, you can, if you want to, use some sewing pins as well. That is if you are making the 3D decoration. So what we're doing is we're creating 2 flat pieces and then we are putting them together and crocheting around the outside. So sewing pins can come in handy when it comes to crocheting them together. As for the stitches we're using today, you'll need to know how to crochet in the round and also how to crochet back and forth in rows. You'll need the chain stitch, single crochet, slip stitch, and an increase and a decrease. And just as a side note, I'm using US terminology for this pattern today. All right, let's get started. So I really hate asking this, but I would like as many crocheters as possible to see this free video tutorial. So to help me do that, would you subscribe to my channel, like this video, comment below. Any or all of those things will help get this video out to more people, which I would really love, and I can't do it without your help. So any support you can give, I really appreciate it. Enough of me, let's get into the pattern. So to start off with, we're going to crochet in the round, which makes this circle. Then we'll attach our second yarn color and work back and forth in rows just to create that little top bit of the bauble. So we're going to start with pink today for the circle, and you will need to make a magic circle to start with for this. If you're not really sure about the magic circle or you need some extra help, I have a tutorial on it, so please do check the links and go to that if you need it. I highly recommend learning how to do a magic circle. It does make crocheting in the round a lot easier. So with our magic circle, we're going to do 6 single crochet into the magic circle. And then pull that yarn tail tight to close the circle. And from here, for round 2, we're going to increase in each stitch around. So we will increase in the next 6 stitches. And because we're working in continuous rounds, I highly recommend using a stitch marker. So I've just done 3 stitches there. So that's 1 increase and 1 stitch in the following stitch. So I need to finish that one to be a 2nd increase. There we go. Now this is our 3rd increase. So you should have 12 stitches now. We are all good to go on to round 3. For round 3, you're going to do a single crochet and then a single crochet increase. So, and then you'll repeat that 6 times. So we'll do the first one. It's 1 single crochet, and then in the next stitch we do an increase. Okay, let's put our stitch marker in so we don't lose our place. It's 3 stitches there. So then the next set we do a single crochet and then another increase in the next stitch. And we just repeat that pattern going round, so single crochet and then increase in the next stitch until we come to the end. This is our last pattern repeat, so a single crochet and then an increase should be your last stitch of this round. Alright, let's move on to round 4, where we will do 2 single crochets, followed by an increase. So that's 2 single crochet. Then the first stitch of our increase, I'm going to quickly stick in the stitch marker now. So we've got 2 and then we need an increase. So I'm going to insert my hook into the same stitch and do another single crochet. Then we'll do a repeat of that pattern and we'll continue to repeat that pattern until we get back to the beginning again. So it's 2 single crochet and then an increase. Now we're on to the last pattern repeat, so 2 single crochet, and then an increase in that last stitch. So there should be 24 stitches around at this point in time. So let's go on to round 5, which is 3 single crochet stitches and then an increase. So that's 1, 2, 3. Stick our stitch marker in and then do an increase. So that's the pattern we'll be repeating until the end. 3 single crochet and then an increase. Now we're up to the end with our final 3 single crochet and an increase in the final stitch. Now you'll notice that there is a slight gap in my magic circle. I am going to tackle that right now and sew in my starting yarn tail. So you pull the yarn tail tight and then using a tapestry needle we just sew in the tail to the back of that starting magic circle. In a couple of stitches, but that just ensures the magic circle isn't going to come loose. It's something I always recommend for all magic circles. I know not everyone does it because they think their stitches are tight enough, etc., etc. But the magic circle doesn't knot your stitches in place. It just has a knot at the very beginning. So It's just something to be warned of. If you want super secure magic circle, make sure you sew in that starting yarn tail. Okay, so going on to round 6 now, we do 4 single crochet and then an increase, and then we repeat that until the end. This is our final repeat of 4 single crochet and then an increase at the end. So that is the end of round 6. At this point you should have 36 stitches around. Now is a good time to just double check that before we go on to round 7. Our stitch count is all good. So going on to round 7, we are doing 5 single crochet and then an increase and repeating that 6 times. So 6 times in total. So that's 1, 2, 3 single crochet, stick in our stitch marker. Four single crochet, 5 single crochet, and then an increase. All right, so 5 single crochet again. And an increase. And keep repeating that stitch combination until you reach your stitch marker. Moving on to round 8, we are doing 6 single crochet and then an increase. So 1, 2, 3, let's stick our stitch marker in. 4, 5, 6, and then we do an increase in that 7th stitch. Now we're repeating that 5 more times until we get to the end. Now we're up to the final repeat here. That's our 6th single crochet, and then we increase in that last stitch there. Now at the end of round 8, you should have 48 single crochets. Before we continue on, you just need to do a slip stitch into that stitch that our stitch marker is currently in. So I'm going to take out the stitch marker, then we're going to do a slip stitch here. There we go. It just helps flatten it out a tiny bit. So then we'll cut our yarn and we will fasten off. Just yarn over and pull through like that. Now to continue crocheting this flat bauble shape, we are going to attach our second colour of yarn. I'm using this grey silver colour. And then we will crochet back and forth to create this little bit here. So to do that, you want to insert your hook into the stitch right next to the stitch where we just fastened off from. Okay, and then you'll attach the new yarn to that stitch. So pull that yarn through and then just do a chain to attach it. Now we go on to our row 9 and we're going to do 3 single crochet. So the first single crochet is into the same stitch where we've just attached the yarn. Then we go into the next stitch after that for our second single crochet, and the next stitch after that for our third single crochet. Okay, and then we chain 1 and turn our work so we can crochet in the opposite direction. For row 10, we do 3 single crochet across, chain 1 and turn. So let's do that now. Then we chain 1 and turn. For row 11, we do the same again. So 3 single crochet, chain 1 and turn. And for row 12, which is our last row, we just do 3 single crochet. All right, so from here, we cut our yarn and we fasten off by yarning over, pulling through, and then pulling that yarn tail tight. At this point, it's a great idea to weave in all of those yarn tails with the tapestry needle. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, so that's our yarn tails sewn in. Now at this point, if you have decided you're going to make a 3D bauble that is stuffed in between, you will need to make a second one of these flat shapes. So to do that, I've put all the timestamps of this video in the description below. So if you go to that description and then click on the bauble pattern to make a second bauble and just follow those instructions again to make a second one, meet me back here and I will show you how to assemble your bauble. Now, if you aren't stuffing your bauble and you just want a flat shape with a crocheted edge and a loop on top, you can just continue on following these instructions now. I've already made my second bauble. You'll notice I have accidentally used the wrong grey yarn. However, this just goes to show that using scrap yarn for these projects works perfectly. It doesn't matter if you mix and match. So I've got a cotton yarn here and acrylic here. So I'm going to stick with it just to give you an example of what this can look like. And I'm also going to go back to using the grey cotton yarn, which I used on this one, to crochet around the outside. So that's what we're going to do now. You will need your stuffing handy if you're going ahead and stuffing your pieces. Before we go on to actually assemble and crochet these pieces together, we have a little bit of decoration to do. You might notice on this original one, we have this nice embroidered snowflake in white. I am going to embroider that today in this silver Rickarumi lame color. So firstly, I'm just going to cut off some of the lame color to do the embroidery with. Once you've got your piece of yarn cut, I'm just going to thread it onto a tapestry needle. I'll do this one first. Now, please keep in mind that you can do whatever shape you want. You can embroider lovely details onto this however you like. I'm going to show you how I do the snowflake, roughly. It's not perfect, but you could do a different decoration on the front if you wanted to. I will be doing embroidery on both sides of the bauble. So I'm going to start roughly here and work my way across. Actually, I'm going to do the points first. So we've got little V shapes at the end. Now I'm going to try and go across horizontally to roughly the same location on the other side. 2 more little lines to create that V shape. And then from here, I'm going to go back the way I came. This is going back and forth a lot. I'm sure you can find a much easier way to do it. But then I'm just going to draw a line straight across, embroider a line, I should say. I'm not drawing. Embroidering a line straight across there. That is our first one. Now I'm going to repeat that process roughly. I'm actually going to do it slightly differently from top to bottom. Now from here, I am going to do a slightly smaller line with a V shape. So I'll start by going to this diagonal here and take it across to about here. And doing the final diagonal stitch. And that is our little snowflake on the front of the bauble complete. So now I'm just going to sew the yarn tails into the back of here. There we have it. That is our first snowflake. Now I'm going to go ahead and do this for the second one just now. Now we've done our embroidery, it is time to crochet the pieces together. Remember, if you only have one piece, that is fine. You just ignore the stuffing instructions, but the rest is the same. If you're crocheting the 3D shape like me, you will need to put your pieces together. And essentially what we'll be doing is inserting our crochet hook into both pieces, and then we will crochet around until we get to about halfway. We'll add stuffing and then we'll continue crocheting around until we get to the top. We'll create a loop at the top and then tie off and fasten off and weave in our ends and we're done. As far as stitch counts go, I don't want you to worry too much about your stitch count. The main thing is that each of your stitches shouldn't be too far away from each other, so they shouldn't look like they're stretching. But the rule of thumb is 1 single crochet in each row. So on this flat piece, we can see there's 3 rows. So it will be 3 single crochets along the side. And then thankfully, because we've worked in the round for the bauble, it will be really easy just to do a single crochet in each of the single crochets around. Then we do 3 up again. In the corner, however, I recommend doing 3 stitches in the corner, and that is just to get us around the corner. And we'll do the same on this side as well. So let's get started. Get the yarn that you want to go around the entire piece. I am actually going to choose the grey just to create a tiny bit of contrast around the shape. So now what we do is we want to make sure our pieces are lined up. If you want to use sewing pins, now would be a good time to put them into your piece just to keep the 2 bits together. I find they get in the way for me, but you may find them helpful. So please do that if you think, you know, it will help. We'll start by actually inserting our hook into the top single crochet on the left because we're working clockwise around. So you want to put it in the same place in the other shape as well. There we go. So we've got our single crochet on top of our hook on both pieces. Now we'll pull the yarn through both sides and just chain 1 to secure the yarn in place. Now we'll start by crocheting 3 single crochet into the same stitch. That is because we're considering it our corner stitch, so we can get around and start crocheting down the side. So let's do that now. Alright, and then we'll crochet down the side, trying to keep these pieces in line with each other. 1 single crochet in each row down is the goal, but don't worry too much if it's not exactly that. As long as the stitches look close enough together, that is the main aim. Okay, now we will start to move on to actually crocheting around the bauble. Now we want to line our stitches up, so we're crocheting in the matching single crochet on both pieces. Hopefully you can see that okay. So we are just going to insert our hook into the 2 stitches, so 1 stitch on each piece, and just make sure they're lining up, and then we're just going to continue crocheting around. So keep going with that, and I'll meet you back at about halfway, maybe a bit further than halfway. Alright, so about here is a good time to start stuffing your shape if you're making the 3D one. So just get a little bit of stuffing and add it in between your pieces. The hardest part is just trying to make your stuffing even across the shape. Remembering at the end you can of course. And then we just keep crocheting single crochets until we get back up here. Now that was our last stitch of crocheting the actual bauble bit together. So we're going to crochet into the side of the rows here, starting right at the bottom. Now we go up to this single crochet, the one right at the end of the row, and we're going to single crochet 3 into that 1 stitch to get around the corner. That's our 3 stitches, okay. And then from here, we're going to crochet 1 single crochet into the middle stitch. And this is when we will now create our loop, which will sit in the middle of the bauble. I use 20 chains for my loop. However, before we get started, I just want to let you know that if you obviously want to make it longer, you can, and to do that, you just add more chains. Or if you want to make it shorter, just don't crochet as many chains as me. So I'm going to go ahead now and do 20. That's my 20 chains done. Now I will loop it back round, and into the same stitch where I started, I'm just going to do another single crochet here. Okay, and that just attaches it to the decoration. To finish off, I'll do a slip stitch into the very first single crochet I started with. So just yarn over, pull through, and then just pull straight through that stitch there. Now cut your yarn, leaving a little bit of a yarn tail for sewing. It doesn't have to be very long, maybe like 10 to 15 centimeters long. Pull that completely through. Okay, so I just pulled through then. Sometimes you can fasten off properly before as well, which I've done in all of the tutorials up until now, but we're just gonna crack on and manage the fact that I haven't done that, so you can see maybe another technique if you haven't done this one before. So I am, from here, just going to sew into the next stitch just to tighten that up. Now, one thing I do like to do is pinch the bottom of the loop together just to make it look a little bit more snipped, I suppose. Like this one. I did it with this one. So the loop isn't like open like it is currently on this one. So I'll do that now as well. I'm just going to weave back through this stitch and that will secure that bit of yarn in place. Now to pinch this loop together, you just insert your needle into the bottom chain of the entire loop, so the 2 bottom chains, and that is 1. And then we're going to wrap it around, basically. We're going to do it again like this. I'm just going to go into the chain again, but a slightly different way. And that is the chain nice and pinched. So then I'll weave this yarn tail through the back. Okay, and then we're just weaving in our yarn ends essentially. So I'm just going to weave it through a couple of stitches, insert it into the back, and then through the bauble like that. And snip that as close as you can to the decoration without cutting the decoration. We'll do the same with this starting yarn tail. And there we go. That is our little Christmas decoration done, our bauble. That is your bauble Christmas ornament completed. I hope this video tutorial has helped you and I really can't wait to see your makes. Please do take a photo, stick it on social media and tag me at Cilla Crochets so I can give you some love. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up, comment below and subscribe to my channel. Even better, turn that little bell on when you subscribe so you get notified when the next video is released. Remember, there are more Christmas ornaments to come. Until next time, happy crocheting!